we really want people to think about what it means to be able to wash your child's clothes, to be able to make sure that they have clean hair, clean uniform, that they have clean teeth, and not to have to worry about that. So many of us are lucky enough to be able to send our children to nursery or school or college clean and ready for their day. But the terrible reality is that millions of parents in this country don't have that privilege. And it just shouldn't be a luxury. Children should be able to go to school with clean uniform, with clean hair, with brushed teeth, feeling ready for their day and ready to learn. And the research that my charity, the Hygiene Bank and Smolder Laundry Company, are putting out today shows the sad reality that, thousands and thousands of children are not in that position. They're showing up in the classroom with dirty uniform or PE kit. They're showing up with unwashed hair or unbrushed teeth, and that's having a terrible impact. It's leading to them being bullying and being isolated, and for some children it means they're not going to school at all, so they're missing out on their future chances, and we just don't believe that's right.
I wanted to ask you about that from a parent's point of view, and for parents who maybe see those images and hear those sorts of stories. We've all been the parent who suddenly realised their son's jumper is an absolute state, or that you get in there and you look like you've not brushed it and you tried your best. At what point are you seeing that those sorts of things actually are more emblematic of a wider problem and a deeper problem which has potential long-term consequences?
Yeah, absolutely. No, of course. Like we've all sent our child in a sort of slightly, beanie jumper or with unbrushed hair. My son definitely went to nursery this morning with his hair all over the shop. But that's not what we're talking about here, Mick. We're talking about parents who are facing really impossible choices, who are struggling to pay their rent, put food on the table, and buy the basic toiletries and cleaning products that we all need. I'm not talking about a one-off jumper with a bit of food down it. I'm talking about parents who are having to choose between, say, period products for themselves or nappies for their child, who are having to have their children share one toothbrush because they can't afford one each, who are having to use washing up liquid to wash hair as well as the dishes. The terrible reality is, because of the cost of living crisis, because of the pandemic, because of so many factors in this country, that families, even like working families, are being forced into a position where they simply can't afford that range of basics that we all need. And if, as a parent, you are choosing between putting food on the table, paying your energy bills, paying your rent, of course, you are going to have to prioritize those things before you buy those basic toiletries and cleaning products. So, that's the kind of situation, that our research is showing us is increasingly widespread. And that's a huge, huge worry for me. I just don't believe that children and families should be being put in that position, or that school staff, which is another key aspect of the research, should be faced with that in their classrooms. Teachers and school staff, and I'm a former teacher myself, you're there to teach, you're there to kind of give children an education. You shouldn't have to be supplementing families with the basics before they can even be ready to learn. That's just not what school staff are there for.
There's a lot of questions in education at the moment about, and you'll be aware of this as a former teacher, about making sure that children actually show up into the classroom,
Yeah.
and big conversations about why so many children are persistently absent from the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Interested in the survey that actually you found maybe evidence that hygiene poverty could be a factor in some of those absences.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what school staff are telling us. So 80% of the school staff we surveyed believe that they've seen children who are either struggling with hygiene poverty now or have done in the past. And there's also a really high percentage who believe that is one of the reasons behind absenteeism. But of course, we can understand that, right? Because another thing that the survey found is about the impact on children of bullying, of isolation, of sort of feeling self-conscious around their peers. So of course you can understand that, with the shame and the embarrassment and the stigma that people tell us they feel when they live with hygiene poverty, that maybe the obvious answer to that is not to send your child to school in unwashed uniform or with dirty hair or with unbrushed teeth. But of course, that's limiting children's potential. It's blocking opportunities. It's not right that parents should be faced with those terrible choices, or that children should be going to school feeling self-conscious and being worried about bullying and peer pressure because of the situation their families are in. And I think, it's always really, really worth remembering that we're all only one step away from hygiene poverty. As I say, like large percentage of these families are working either full-time or part-time, and wages just haven't kept pace with inflation. But that also things that could happen to any one of us today: a bereavement, a job loss, an accident, a serious illness, domestic violence incident, all those things push people into hygiene poverty from one day to the next. And I just don't believe that it's right that the impacts of that should be being felt by children across this country, and that teachers and school staff should also be grappling with that.
Let's talk about school staff. As part of the survey results, the findings that teachers spending upwards of £30 of their own money to supply that. What are the sorts of stories you're hearing about what that money goes to and what that money has been spent on?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing, is that teachers and school staff are spending a staggering amount of their own money on these products. We think sort of up to 40 million a year, which is an astonishing number. So yeah, I think what we are seeing is that teachers and school staff are buying those basics for families. They're buying the laundry detergent, they're buying the toothbrushes and the toothpaste, they're buying the soap. We're not talking about luxury items here. We're just talking about the basics that we would all wish our children to have. And school staff are stepping in and trying to help families so that they can get those children back to the classroom and get them learning again.
Now, you're calling on the government to take action on this one with the new task force that they've got in place. I've got a statement from the government in a direct response to the work you've been doing. So I asked them for a statement ahead of this conversation. They said to me, we are taking action to deliver our mission to break down barriers to opportunity and remove the stain of child poverty from our country. That includes legislating to bring down school uniform costs by capping the number of branded items, and as many as 750 schools will be delivering delivering breakfast clubs as early as next April. We have also launched a child poverty task force co-chaired by the Education Secretary and the Work and Pensions Secretary to listen to frontline staff and struggling families, delivering an ambitious strategy to increase household income, bring down essential costs and tackle the challenges felt by those living in poverty. It's a relatively open response, I would probably say. Ruth, what's your instant reaction to that?
I'm really glad there's been a response. It's brilliant that that our parliamentarians are sitting up and paying attention when we raise issues like this. So I think that's a really positive first step. I think the bill, I'm delighted to hear, and again, from my own experience as a teacher, I think school breakfast clubs are an excellent initiative. But I think the next step that I'd like to hear about is the explicit recognition, particularly from the Child Poverty Task Force, of hygiene poverty as a specific issue. So, I think, you just read it to me. I think they made reference to sort of poverty in general and sort of the cost of living and raising incomes. Those things are all great, but there really is a specific issue around hygiene poverty and awareness of hygiene poverty and the specific impacts of hygiene poverty, which is what my charity, the Hygiene Bank, and Small, the laundry company, who are our partners in this campaign today, really, really want to make sure is on the ministerial agenda. Because compared to food and fuel poverty, which sadly we've all got very used to talking about and hearing about, hygiene poverty is the hidden crisis. It's the silent crisis. And that's because of the shame and the stigma and the embarrassment that people who live with hygiene poverty feel. So I think it's really important that our parliamentarians are listening to their constituents, to families, to children, to teachers and school staff in their constituencies about the very real and insidious impact that hygiene poverty specifically is having in that context of broader poverty.